Good afternoon. My name is Darla, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Service Operations Insight Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you'd like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you'd like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Sheldon, you may begin your conference.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first webcast for 2014. I hope everyone had a good holiday, and welcome back to work. Today we're going to have an interesting webcast from Steve Solomon presenting some information about some external connections that SOI can do for Microsoft SCOM and for HP Operations Manager. So he's going to be presenting that here shortly. And I just want to remind everyone about the Q&A options within the webcast on the top right. Please go there if you want to ask any questions about anything Steve is presenting. Now, this is going to be a shorter than normal webcast, maybe 20, 30 minutes or so. So there's also going to be plenty of time after that, too, for any general questions anyone has about anything SOI related. And I'd also like to remind everyone, too, to check out the wiki. Right now it's just a bare framework, but we're going to definitely be putting a lot of work into that this year, getting that updated. And anyone that wants to contribute anything, by all means, feel free. We want as much user participation there as possible. So let's go ahead and get started then. Steve, feel free to take over.
Mary, did you have a couple announcements first, or shall I start? I will jump in.
Sounds good.
So, welcome everybody. My apologies. I had the SCOM update on the last user community call, and I got so excited about talking about ServiceNow and all of the work that our team has done that I missed this. So I put together some slides to help see if I can communicate this. My team is called Solutions Integration Team, so I'm not officially part of the SOI organization. We are a team that builds integrations to non-CA products for the common good, you might say. And so we have a lot of interaction with SOI with all of their integrations. We also do some things for the PAM automation side and some stuff for NIMSOF Monitor. And so as part of that, even though I'm a peer to Dave, he is my customer, and so you guys are all my customers by extension. And so the SCOM connector comes from my team, and it is a very heavily used connector. There's an old rule of software that says if software doesn't need to be changed, it's not being used, and if it is being used, it needs to be changed, and that is constant with the SCOM connector. And so as part of that, we ended up having 2 versions of the SCOM connector. So I wanted to explain that because what happens is we get the request all the time, I need the version of the SCOM connector. Well, there's 2 of them, and you need to understand the differences and the good and the bad between them and why we have 2 of them to make sure that you're using the right version of the connector. I did want to make a pitch for sunny Arizona. So for all of my North American colleagues that are suffering through a polar vortex, it's a little chilly, 43 degrees here this morning in Scottsdale, Arizona, and wish you were here because it is actually going to be 63 and great golfing weather. So think about us next to your winter vacation. So going back from the advertisement to the SCOM release, so we have, as a team, a love-hate relationship with this connector. We love it that customers come back and say that we wish all connectors worked like the SCOM connector and it has all of this great functionality, and yet we get bombarded with constant requests for changes, so much so that I typically have multiple engineers assigned full-time just to do customer support work and enhancement works on this connector. As a matter of fact, if you've reached out to our team and you've gone past level 1 support to level 2 support, you've probably talked to some of my guys, and there are some customers that have talked to them so much where they're building these personal relationships that's probably a little much, but we want you to know that we do all appreciate you and we understand how valuable this connector is to the SOI user communities, and if you don't have this connector, you're one of the few SOI customers that haven't deployed it. You really should. It is really significant. Okay, so a couple about the 2 different terms. So we started with a Catalyst 2.5 version of the connector, and that's the current release is 3.0.00. And that connector, a lot of customers have. And one of the reasons that we continued using it, because we did do an upgrade to the Catalyst 3.2 version of the connector, but we ran into some startup issues with performance with that connector. So what happens is if you have an SCOM connector, SCOM environment with lots of configuration items, when the connectors start, it has to do a synchronization of those with the Catalyst server. And so what happens, that ends up taking a long time. And the difference between the Catalyst 2.5 version and the 3.2 version is significantly different. So our original intentions were to upgrade the connector and do away with the 2.5 and move and standardize on the 3.2. But because the customers came back and said, geez, you know, this startup time is too significant that we can't take it, we need to stay on the Catalyst 2.5 version. We also found out that new customers, as you were doing your policy mappings and your updates in your first month of deployment as you were getting used to it, you had to start and stop the connector a lot to apply your policy file updates, and that the startup time was too significant. So right now we are supporting 2 different releases of it. So if you are using the Catalyst 2.5 connector, let you know that you're supported, and if you're using the Catalyst 3.2 version or the version 4.0.02, you are supported. Unfortunately, because we have such a barrage of changes and customer requests, our original intentions was to do away with 2.5 and only do the changes in the 3.2 or the version 4 level. We started getting the connector out of sync. And so if you move from one version to the other version, please understand that they're not exactly the same today. That is something that we're trying to resolve. And if you do move from the 3.0 version to the 4.0 version, that there may be some differences in operational behavior that we need to make you aware of. We are looking to do new releases of both versions, and that will correct that and standardize the logic between the 2 of them. A couple of hints: if you are using the Catalyst 3.2 connector, make sure that you have the disable delta true, because it can substantially reduce your startup time. All right? So there's a couple of limitations. So when there's guidance, when customers come out and they say, well, I need the SCOM connector, usually you'll hear from me or somebody in support that says, okay, there's guidance on which one you should use. Let's talk about what you're doing. If you're just all using SCOM 2007 or you're using SCOM 2012 as you were using 2007, then the 3.0.00 connector will work for you just fine. So beware of the differences, and hopefully when we get to the next release of both of these connectors, the only thing that will be substantially different will be the startup time required when the connector goes offline and comes back and reinitializes itself. All right, so also I get the request, I need the connector for MS SCOM 2012. Well, that adds a little bit of complexity because both versions of the connector support the first version of SCOM 2012. And so these slides, if you've seen a Microsoft briefing, I pulled them out of a Microsoft deck for a couple of these. So I just wanted to add a little bit to them to say, okay, guys, when you're asking for the connector, we need a little more background than just SCOM 2012, because we need to know also if you're using some of the new features that came out in 2012, so we know which is the right version of the connector to work with you on. Okay? So the 3.0.00 connector does not support newer features, and there's a key one that was introduced in SCOM 2012. And if you're using the management servers, the multiple management servers, then you will need to use the 4.0.02 version of it, and understand that in your planning you need to understand for significant delay startup times for the synchronization of the connector. I'm not an expert in SCOM. But part of the deck that I pulled from Microsoft, they did have some about the before and after. So and since I'm still getting customers saying, hey, we're moving to SCOM 2012, I wanted to bring these up in the deck to say, okay, this is what the difference is. And so in your 2007, you had your management servers, your remote management servers, and normally there would be one of them we'd connect to. And that's what the little RMS is, and you may have a passive one that may come up and connect to. And so the connector was designed for this environment. So the 3.0.00 connector considers your environment to be like this, that there will be a single management server that it's taking the alerts from. In SCOM 2012, they did define some additional services where they have multiple management servers, and if one falls over, you can automatically connect to the next. So in that world, if you are using only a single management server and you're using it in an SCOM 27 type way, then you can go ahead and use the earlier version, the Catalyst 2.5 version of the connector. It's when you move to an HA availability where you have multiple management servers or you have a cluster of them, that's when it is required that you go to 2012 if you want the HA automatic rollover features. So, so what will happen is if one of those fails, the work will roll over, and that's kind of what it's designed to be. So one of the things that happens in this, and some of the logic we've added in the 4.0 version of the connector, was when the connector starts up, it goes out and it says, give me a list of all of the management servers in the complex, right? And so we go ahead and we build those and we create those in an XML file. And then if the management server fails that we're talking to, we go to the next one in the list. Now, some of them are not active management servers. There's different kinds of management servers in the list. So if you go to the 4.0 connector, you look at the XML file, you'll see some servers which are not management servers in that list. What we do is we just use it and we pull right through the list until we find which is the active management server. Then we reconnect and start working again. So that's the way that the HA support has been implemented in the 4.0 version of the connector for multiple management servers in an HA environment for SCOM. So one of the things that we need to be sure is we need to make sure that when we're asking for the connectors, what is your environment target and what is the implications to make sure that we give you the right version. Now, as I do mention that we are working on new versions of the connectors, and hopefully it'll be less complex because we'll have support across the board for both of them. We are also working on doing optimization to the startup process that will entail a future version of Catalyst. And so, what we're trying to do is work within the bounds of what we have as the connector to make sure that we provide you as much flexibility and visibility, as well as work with our peers in the Catalyst organization about optimizing the startup process so that it does run faster. So that's just one about the pool and your pool. And so what we'll do is we'll look for all the servers in the pool, and another slide for Microsoft. So the other issue that we get a lot, and where my team spends a lot of our money and budget, is supporting management packs and alerts. This is extremely trialing. It's a challenge for us because there are hundreds. I did a list of over 500 management packs at one point in time. So with all the ones that are out there available from Microsoft and all the ones that are out there from the different vendors, there is no way that in our test environment that we can duplicate all of the alerts, not to mention that you have the ability, your SCOM folks have the ability to create custom alerts or customize the alerts. And so what happens is, since SOI consolidates these alerts, there are lots of them that don't come out of the box mapped. And unfortunately, the way that you map them so that you can tell your alerts what they should look like in SOI is through policy mapping and going through and updating the XML files. We have tried several different ways to work around the policy mapping file challenge. We recorded some in-house videos that we're using with people in our services folks to say this is how you do it when you're working with customers. We've tried some training presentations for some customers that have unique consideration issues. However, most of the time it's come back that we've taken tickets to help with policy mapping, and we've taken them into our level 2 engineering team, and we've said, hey, can you help us do these? And what happens is then we require that you create log files for us, and you send us those log files, because there's no way for us to duplicate all the kinds of alerts that may be in your environment. And it's a bit of a painful process because you have to go in and stop and start your connector, do the log files, and send them to us, and then send us your policy file. And then my team has been doing customizations for policy file mapping and then sending them back to you. And unfortunately, as you add management packs, it's not a one-time process. And a couple of our customers have come to us, and there are hundreds of alerts, and one customer came with as many as 1,000. And so my investment for my level 2 engineering team is really significant, trying to work around these policy mappings. I know it's not a great process. I'll let you guys know that my team is doing everything we can do around working around the Catalyst limitations of the policy file mapping. But it is an imperfect system today, and simply the complexity of all the management packs and all of the different kinds of policy alerts that you can do and all the ones that you can manage, it is something that on the customer side you guys need to be extremely aware of and be as trained as possible so that you're optimizing the value of your SOI process. So we've done what we can from a person point of view on what we can do inside of the connector. And so because it's the policy mappings and it goes with the Catalyst, that's where, again, we're working with the Catalyst team and seeing what we can do in new versions of Catalyst that may be coming out to help optimize the process. So we've been kind of filling the gap because we didn't want to turn you over to services and say, hey, you got to do all your policy mapping as part of services. And we even reached out to Global Delivery and said, hey, can we do a fee for service? And that didn't work out for us. And so right now we just kind of been shouldering the burden by helping you out. So right now, if you do have a problem with policy mapping and you need help with it, if you create a ticket for our team, then either our level 1 support or our level 1 support team or our level 2 support team will do what we can to help you out to get over those issues. We have also developed something in-house that I'm strongly considering sending out to customers that have lots of customization or lots of management pack. It's a file mapping utility. So our team, because we've been doing this so much for so many customers, have done some in-house utilities where we can look at the log and look for unmapped alerts. It was created as an in-house tool to help our level 2 support guys, but in the meantime, if you want to give it a try, I am taking invites for customers that have this challenge or work a lot with the SCOM connector or have a very advanced solution. If you drop me an email, I will put you on the list, and as soon as I'm sure that the utility is customer-facing quality, I'll be sending that out, and we'll be doing some site-specific training. So in addition to having L1 and L2 support on the policy mapping, we will give you some tools to enhance your abilities to do the updates yourself. That way you don't have to capture your log files and your policy file and send them to us and wait for us to have time to update them and send them back to you. So we are doing what we can within the constructs of the current architecture, and we're looking to take a few of those customers and say, hey, you know, will this utility help out, and does it make everybody's lives better? Don't forget, in the Q&A section is where you should be posting your comments or your questions if you have for me when I finish the slides. I'll be happy to take those on. I know it's a complex process, and it is a bit confusing, and there's a lot of different information as we've gone different directions to get to this point to where we're at. I did mention that for SCOM, we have 2 new releases. We are continuing with the strategy to have 2 different versions of the connectors until we upgrade the Catalyst version. So we will have a new version of the Catalyst 2.5 connector, and we will have a new version of the 4.1 connector, or 4.1 for Catalyst 3.2. The goal is to have these available somewhere around the end of January when the work is done. It's difficult to us to commit target dates for this because what happens is the people who are working on this connector are also the people that are doing your level 2 support. They're the experts in most of these areas for issues, policy mappings, defects, enhancements. And so as that they have free time or they're waiting for the customers to respond, if they've sent you back a policy file and they're waiting for you to try it and say, hey, yeah, it's good or not, they're out there working on enhancing the connectors and bringing them back to standardization. So we're trying to do this for ourselves also so that we have compatible code across the board. I tried to get a list of all of the changes that we're working on, and a lot of them are beyond my technology level with the SCOM connector. So as a product manager, I have 30 or so integrations and connectors, and I'm not an SCOM expert. But I went ahead and I put them into the list in case the information was familiar with those of you who have expertise in this area. So what we've done is we've collected the enhancement requests, the defects, the policy mapping files that we've done, and we're trying to build them into the standard GA. And in addition, when we do the policy file updates, and we've done quite a few of them, we are trying to bundle those that make sense to release as part of the GA product so that there is a lower level of individual site customization. So if there's things that are standard management packs that ship with SCOM, we're trying to add those custom mappings to the GA connector as much as possible, which will most likely be the biggest batch of those post the January releases. So for January, what we're trying to do is we're trying to streamline the 2 connectors and make sure that they have equivalent functionality and that the only difference will be the startup performance time, and so that you can make your decision on whether you want to run the connector in a Catalyst 3.2 independent container or do you want it installed in the SOI environment under the Catalyst 2.5. So that's really our goal, is to take all of the different issues that we've accumulated over the past several months and standardize the 2 connectors to have them have the same functionality. So some of those, I won't go through them because a lot of them, hopefully, I'm hoping that some of you guys will understand more than me, other than the connection times, the shutdowns, the traceability, the logging. We have so many requests for this connector, and literally I have so many engineers almost permanently attached. We continue to tweak it as we go, and we support customers on a constant basis. So post the new releases that I mentioned on the previous slide, there will also be a next release that we're already working on, planning on, that has additional significant enhancements that we can't do. And so that would, at this point in time in the January, and that would be a roadmap item. So roadmaps, all features are subject to change. Your mileage may vary. It may come out as a feature that you want, but it may not be deployed exactly as you need it. So just to let you know that roadmap are all forecasted things we would like to do. So we absolutely would like to get to one version of the connector, and so we'll maintain parity between the two. When we get to a point with a Catalyst version that we can go to one connector, we will be end-of-lifing both sets and going with a new connector that supports the new version of Catalyst. So keep that in mind as we go forward. So we are continuing to work for policy mapping file improvements. We know it's a painful process, and we know it's very manually intensive today. We are seeing what we can do to try to make the process better. And we're trying to add as many as possible. And so because we can't duplicate everything in our environment that you have in your environment, it is a very time-consuming process. And so I appreciate it. There were several customers that came to us with large lists, and it takes us quite a while to do the work. It's just the nature of the work, but hopefully you'll appreciate that our team is helping you in this area rather than having, teaching you how to do it and making you guys go through the effort or hiring services to get the work done. A couple of the key items that have come up that we would really like to do in the version after the one, so it's a roadmap item, is the fixed list of management servers. So right now I'd say that it's a dynamic list when it comes up. We'd like to be able to have you guys go in and say, look, rather than us discover them and go through the order that we discover, go ahead and give us a list and we'll just process through the end of that list. And so that you'll know exactly which server is the next one in line. So there is also some connector launch in context that have been asked for. These are all customer requested enhancements. And then there was also one that came out of, I believe, Spectrum, where Spectrum will pass back a service desk ticket into SCOM. So as we've gone past the initial learnings and getting lots of alerts in and making value, we've started taking feedback on enhancements for customers. So I bring these in on the roadmap is that we know this connector is used really heavily and you guys are dependent on it, and it makes SOI all that much more valuable in your environment. So if you do have additional enhancements, now is actually the time to be sending them into support so that we can get them in and get them into our enhancement review process and see if we can get them packaged into the next release. So the release after the ones that I've given you release numbers on, we're really trying to focus on enhancements rather than just the defects, the issues, the policy mappings, and the things that are more operationally in tune. So we're trying to package those up and plan for those at this point in time. So we have a lot of things that happen on the SCOM connector. We spend a lot of money on supporting it. Hopefully you guys appreciate that, and it is optimizing the value of SOI in your environment. So with all of the alerts that you can do and the ability to create your incidents and to your service desk and have a single dashboard, that we think this is just a great feature for SOI. And so my team invests heavily to make you guys successful, and we appreciate your feedback, positive or negative. I get great feedback from the customers that are using it that is just amazingly awesome, and they'd like the rest of my connectors to work as awesomely. And then I also get the feedback, but yes, but it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, and it doesn't do this. I take those kind of things as it's an awesome connector and you're getting value of it, you just need more. And that's okay because, as I mentioned, software that's being used often needs to be changed, and now is a great time to get your items into the backlog if there are things that you're looking for in the SCOM connector. All right, so I think that's the end of my slide, so I'm going to go ahead and open the call. So Darla, if you're still online, if you would open the lines for questions, and then I'll answer a couple that have come in from Q&A.
Certainly. At this time, I would like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Once again, that's star 1. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster.
All right. right, and while we're pausing, I'll go ahead and I'll take them in line. So as you're doing your star one and you're asking online, you can also post your questions in the WebEx Q&A section. So I will start with those while you guys are queuing up online. So the question is, does the 4.0 connector support SCOM 2012 R2? And the answer is yes. We've just completed a certification, so it's only the Catalyst 3.2 version, which is the 4.0 version. We have successfully tested it and certified it with R2. So if you're using the Catalyst 2.5 version or the 3.0 version of the connector, that testing has not yet been completed, and we are looking to hopefully do it as part of the releases that are coming out later in the next 30, 45 days or so. So we'll be looking to take that one and do that level of certification as well. But the 4.0 one has been tested and has not had any issues, and so right now we are certifying SCOM 2012 R2 with that version of the connector. Any online, Darla? Anybody on the phone?
There are no audio questions at this time.
Well, you guys should ask me more questions.
I've got a couple for you, Steve.
Yes.
Oh. How old are the 3.0 and 4.0 connectors at this point?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll answer those. And it's not easy for me to answer at the moment because I'm not on the VPN for performance.
Okay, not a problem.
But I can send that out to you. You know what we do is we do constant ones. So even if I gave you the GA date, it's very often that the customers that are out there have a later version, which is a fixed version that we've created for them. So even if I said they came out in November, it's quite likely that many of the customers on the call may have a later version than that we've done custom fixes for them and sent them out.
And would there be any example customized customer policy files that we could post on the community for people to see how that gets customized?
And we started working with that on services and asking services when they do policy mapping files, could they post them onto the community? I don't think we've been overly successful with that. Okay. And right now our team is trying to take those that we use as examples and bundle them into the GA version. So I don't think that my team has been posting those. But if you guys would like to post your own, I mean, as long as we don't violate any custom IP knowledge, but especially with services, if we can encourage them to post them, we do like to do that. But I don't think we've done too many of those at this point in time.
All right, thank you. And would you prefer that people contact you directly for comments regarding the SCOM connector? Or if they will have any sort of improvement ideas, would you prefer them to post them in the ideas portion of the community? What would you prefer?
I prefer the ideas portion of the community and or with support with an enhancement request.
Okay.
If you email them to me directly, then they have a chance to be getting lost. If I get a ticket number out of it, then it's easier for me to keep track that I haven't missed anything. If you have comments, it's great. Send them to me direct. If you have comments that it's awful, send those to me direct, and we'll engage on that and try to make it whole. But generally, if you have an enhancement idea, you want to make sure that it gets in and it gets tracked, and you get a number with it so that you can call back later and say, hey, what happened to this one?
Okay, thank you. And are there versions of SOI required for the connectors? Like when SOI 3.2 comes out officially, will that support the 3.0 connector still?
Yes. So it's my understanding, and Dave is on the call for that to talk about SOI 3.2, but we will go, I know that it's, in an early release, we will be doing the certifications, but it is my understanding that both versions will work with 3.2, and it's something that we'll be verifying, I'm sure, as part of these releases that are coming out in the next little while.
And before we get into the 3.2 too much or anything, the one last thing I was wondering about the connectors for SCOM is if you could talk slightly about the installation process, where it needs to be installed and anything.
You know, I can't. So I've been working on the features and the functionalities, and my engineers do the install, and I didn't bring one of those guys along to be able to answer that question, so sorry.
I think this is different than some of the other ones where I think it needs to have a component that's actually installed on the SCOM server, if I'm not mistaken.
It's quite likely.
Okay.
Because of the level of the advanced integration, oftentimes that we have to do something which we call local versus remote. And if we have to install components locally, that's usually called out in the installation guide. I just don't know for this one.
So I see a couple other questions about 3.2. Dave, would you mind talking about that in a little bit, answering a couple of those?
Yeah, yep, not a problem. So questions about what's our current version. So we're on 3.1 with the service pack, so 3.1, service pack 1, I believe, and then 3.2 is coming out in some weeks from now. We're in a new thing for us, a new experiment, sort of a limited availability program. So we've identified a handful of customers, and we're working with our SWAT team on hand-holding with a bit of extra care and feeding some early 3.2 deployments, and then we're going to open it up for full marketing launch. What we're planning right now is at about the end of February. So if you have an urgent need, let me know for 3.2. Otherwise, we're doing some extra special solution end-to-end testing with some early deployments in our limited availability mode, and then we'll go broadly here at the end of February.
Thank you.
Yep.
We do have Brian Hunter explaining in the Q&A that he's installed 4.0.2 in 3.2 SOI, and says that he did see the extreme startup time that you were talking about, in addition to some failure of new alarms. So that's some interesting information there. Thank you, Brian. So Steve, if there are no more questions for this, I guess we could move on to the HP portion.
Thank you. Just looking through the rest of the questions. And it does say the SCOM connector requirement is to be on the same domain as the SCOM Operations Manager. Okay. So what you just heard Dave talk about SOI 3.2 is a limited availability. We also have a new connector that is a limited availability connector for HP Operations Manager. So when we go out and we build connectors, we oftentimes will get requests from customers that says, geez, it would really be nice if we have a connector for this. And it's awful hard to understand what the requirements are for alert passing, because we're not usually experts in that target platform, as is the case in HP Operations Manager. And so what we do is we go research the platform, we build the integration, and we say, okay, in the context of the use cases of SOI, this is what we think it should do. And we have done that, and we have tested it, and we have it available as limited availability. So what we do, it's kind of like a beta, but what happens is in a beta, oftentimes the product is cooked and baked, and you're verifying that the features work. In a little bit of availability, when you work with integrations, we give it to you, and we ask, hey, does it work? But we also say, does it do the things that you need it to do? So oftentimes in a limited availability, at least for connectors, it's more of a joint development effort that says, okay, let's optimize this for your environment under the assumption that other customers will benefit from the same work. So if you have HP Operations Manager and you're interested in connecting it with SOI and you would like to work with us on the limited availability program, we would love to engage you in this process, because our next step is we need to do some live customer examples and make sure that as we expect customers to use HP Operations Manager, that you actually are, and to make sure that in the integration that we're squeezing the maximum amount of value for you as customers. So if you guys would like to get involved, if you have that as a challenge in your environment and you're willing to work with us, we would love to have you sign up for our HP Operations Manager Limited Availability Program. Some of the differences on limited availability is in beta, as I mentioned, that oftentimes the product will be cooked and we have a specific validation window, and that we generally have a target date for release. In the limited availability, we don't do that. We work with customers until we say, yes, the connector is valuable, and then we take it to GA status. The difference is, if you have HP Operations Manager and you say, great, I have it, I'll wait for the GA, you may wait a long time because everybody else may wait. So when we did the ServiceNow integration, we had lots of customers that came up and said, we want it, but not a lot of them that wanted to be in the limited availability program, and so it took us many months in the LA program. So I don't have a GA target date. It all depends on you guys and the customer groups that is out there. So if you have that, you need that, you want to participate, you want to help us get it to GA, we would love your participation. You can reach out to Dave Walters, your SOI product manager, or myself, Steve Solomon, to join that program. There is a little pre-release document that we ask you to sign that just says, by the way, this is limited release, it's pre-release, it's not GA. Install it and test, use it all you want, provide us your feedback, but please don't put it in production unless you truly understand the risk. And then we do ask that once we do go GA, that you replace it within 3 months with the GA version. So there's just a couple of things that we ask for a part of it. We don't ask for a definitive hardcore testing plan or you to go through the features. We're overall looking for overall connector validation and recommendations for enhancements and improvements. This is a great way to bring in a connector that's highly optimized for your environment. And by the way, you can take it back to your management when it gets deployed and said, hey, there was a lot of your hard work that was part of this success as part of optimizing your data center environment. So that's just our note on HP Operations Manager. It's ready to be distributed, so if you guys are interested, we would love to have you participate. Mr. Schulten, that's my update on HP Operations Manager. If there's any questions on that, I'd take questions on the LA process or HP Operations Manager as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll wait a little bit here to see if any questions arise on that. All right, if we don't see any shortly, we'll call it a day. Thank you very much for all that information.
To open questions for the group? We've got quite a few attendees. If we open the phones for any general questions, since Dave's on the line.
Sure. Yeah, if there are any questions at all about SOI, either this webcast, previous ones, anything in general, this would be a great time to ask. We've still got definitely plenty of time remaining.
And in order to ask an audio question, simply press *1 on your telephone keypad.
It's also a good time to say thank you to Dave Walters, your product manager, because I know he works endlessly on trying to make it as successful as possible.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you to you for your support, seriously.
And just to let you know, at this moment, we do not have any audio questions.
One just came in on Q&A. Oh, this is a really good one from Bill, Dave. And this one we talk about a lot. So this is a good question for user community. Are there any plans to support Linux for SOI?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have a firm plan for that. We've had it on the backlog. We're trying to find a way to devote the resources to get that done. It would it's Java code, and it would seemingly be fairly simple, but it's apparently not that. It's a big Q&A effort, and it's also therefore beyond that a sort of a matrix, a support platform matrix effort. So no commitment there yet, but we're still interested in getting the feedback on the need for that. So let us know.
And I'll add from my side also. It's not technically difficult, but it's expensive, and it's not a one-time effort. With my 30 or so connectors to support them all in Linux, that adds a tremendous amount of testing overhead, which doesn't add new features. So as a product manager, we look at that and we go, geez, do I spend all this money there, or do I spend it on adding new features? So that is a difficult one for us, and so your feedback in this area helps Dave and I to make sure that we're making the right decisions. Will support on LA connectors be handled the same way as GA connectors? Christo, that is a fabulous question, and I didn't cover that. So the difference with LA connectors, in my case, is that level 2 engineering takes direct calls on them. So as we're doing a new connector, we don't necessarily train our level 1 engineers, and so if you do open a ticket with level 1, they'll immediately pass it through to level 2 engineering. So basically what happens is you get a direct line to the engineering team building the connector through the process. So yes, we do ask that you create a ticket so that we can make sure that it's tracked. However, it bypasses level 1 and goes straight to level 2 and directly to the engineering team working and building on the connector. That's a very good question. Okay then. Steve and Dave, I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you all again in a couple months. Until then, have a good day.
Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.